The Straw Hats have killed again! Today in Fictional Pirate Court, we will be trying 4 to 5 more Straw Hats for their alleged life-ending deeds, including one case that required multiple translations and adaptations to solve. So get this right, there is a character in One Piece who, depending on what you've read or watched and how you read or watched it, was either viciously kill-murdered by a Straw Hat or not. And that's a bit of a problem because both outcomes exist in official media. This is quite the legal conundrum. However, we're going to start by calling Nik Robin to the stand again, because in the previous video, Nik Robin was tried and acquitted of all charges, and this was met with some controversy in the comments, with further accusations such as, I am a first responder, and I can say with 100% confidence that Luffy and Robin have killed the vast majority of people they have fought. And I want to say that I agree to an extent. If any of what Robin did happened to a real person, then they would be 100% dead. But this is One Piece, where birds survive nukes, so we can't really implement real-world standards. However, with that said, I don't know if it's looking too good for Robin because some fantastic cases were brought to the court's attention. And we will begin with the following. You forgot Robin killed Black Moria. So I imagine that was a typo and the commenter meant to say Black Maria instead of conjuring the image of Black Moria in my mind brain. However, actually this comment is kind of on point. Because before we get to Black Maria, we actually need to charge Robin on a count against Gecko Moria. Because this altercation is significantly more vicious than I had remembered. To set the scene, the Straw Hats are fighting Oars. Oars, he's very big, and the Straw Hats, they're all very small, so it's a bit of a problem. But then another problem because Gecko Moria decides to pilot his meat mech, and Robin sees an opportunity to solve the Oars problem by getting rid of Gecko Moria. So she does one of her classic clutch formations, and as it's about to happen, Usopp speaks up and encourages murder by saying, yeah, keep going, Robin, break his neck. Usopp revealing his raw bloodlust there, and as Robin performs the requested act of murder, Usopp and Nami both celebrate after they see Moria's neck broken. In this moment, the Straw Hats are celebrating what they believe to be Robin killing someone. It's quite the surreal moment to look at. These are our heroes, everyone. However, Moria did survive by switching places with Doppelman. However, if he didn't have that ability, all evidence points to the idea that Robin would have flat out killed a warlord of the sea right then and there. And this is exactly why the world government tried to have him killed after Marineford. They were right. If a warlord of the sea can be beaten by pre-time skip Robin, then he is too weak. I guess he wasn't beaten, and they also didn't kill him, so maybe he's not too weak. Maybe they made a mistake. But with this evidence, I do think we could convict Robin on one count of attempted murder because she was definitely gunning for that outcome. It was precise and calculated, and furthermore, you know what? We're also going to convict Usopp as a potential accessory to attempted murder. I don't think you can convict on the word potential, but we've done it now, and we can't undo it. That's the fictional pirate legal system. But the big problem is that Robin's powers, they're very inconsistent in how deadly they look versus how deadly they actually turn out to be. So this attack that was supposed to kill Gecko Moria, that's great, but we've seen similar attacks actually be even more powersome attacks that did not succeed in killing their targets. The most problematic Robin attacks are the vague ones. And with that, I should say that we received a number of allegations regarding Robin killing Black Maria during the raid on Onigashima. In fact, this was by far the most common allegation we received. And it's a tricky one. Robin fights are always brutal just via the nature of her powers, and Black Maria was the recipient of a very unenvious honor, which was to have the very first grand jacuzzi clutch performed on her, which looks like Robin is snapping all kinds of body parts, including Black Maria's neck. It's quite graphic because we see Black Maria's eyes go white, indicating either unconsciousness or a departure from this mortal realm. And I use such dramatic language because Robin herself claims right before performing it that, quote, I can be a demon if I have to, and demons are not typically known for all of the mercy it is that they take on their victims. With the manga alone, I'm not convinced. And I suspect that most of the Black Maria death believers come from the anime. And you know, one of the common themes of this video, nay, this trial, is going to be times that the anime makes these events look a lot more gruesome than they did in the manga. And in this case, there are certain close-ups of Black Maria in the anime that make this attack look like one of the most torturous things that the human body could possibly endure. Look at her, she's not having a good time. And when Robin does finally put her out of her misery and the abstract break occurs, we go from Black Maria in light to her body falling motionless into the darkness. Which, if I didn't know One Piece, I would certainly say is implying that we've gone from a state of life to a state of death. But I do know One Piece, and it's not necessarily implying that. This incident takes me back to the Spandam event at Enies Lobby. There, Nik Robin broke his back in an incredibly visceral and not at all nice looking way. However, even Spandam survived, and I say even Spandam because he is, in the only canonical method of power scaling that One Piece has Doriki, officially weaker than the average Marine. So if Spandam can survive an attack like this, then so can any average Marine, and so can Black Maria. Also, nobody ever says that Black Maria is dead. In fact, we don't know the fates of any of the Tobiropo, not even Drake at the moment. What's happening with Drake? And given that, this is One Piece and people can survive literally anything so long as no one says or shows that they've died, I have no choice but to find Robin not guilty on the count of killing Black Maria. To summarize Robin though, even though we can't get any of the murder charges to stick, there's just not enough evidence, she certainly doesn't seem to take issue with the concept of killing. As presented, she seemed fully prepared to remove Gecko Moria from existence, but we're also forgetting the much more obvious attempted assassination of Iceberg on Water 7. Although that gets slightly confusing as well, because Iceberg, he's attacked twice across 2 nights. The first attack from Robin was never intended to kill him. It was to get Nik Robin's name out there and put suspicion onto the Straw Hats. However, the very next night, Bluno ordered Robin to kill Iceberg, and honestly, I believe that she would have done it. At this point, Robin thought that her life was over, and she would have made whatever sacrifice necessary to ensure the safety of the Straw Hats. So I guess it's more of a noble assassination if such a thing exists. But look, we've spoken about Robin. The other Straw Hats, not much better. Because we have a wild scenario coming up next. One that I was blissfully unaware of until the flood of comments came in from the last video. We here at the Department of Fictional Pirate Justice received a lot of allegations regarding the murder of Satori. Now, if you don't remember Satori, I don't blame you. He was one of Enel's priests, quite specifically the one who enjoyed playing with his balls, who was defeated by Luffy and Sanji, and Usopp was also there, but he didn't really contribute. Which, good for him, because it means that he's not on the stand today. And Luffy and Sanji dealt with Satori in a bit of a brutal way, admittedly. Luffy essentially tied him with, himself, thus restraining Satori, so that Sanji could deliver the alleged killing blow, which was his concusse. Now, we don't confirm a kill from this scene alone. It's actually much later down the line when we see Satori's siblings, Hotori and Kotori. No one asked them to, but they decided to rock up and attack the Straw Hats as retribution. But personally, I've never thought that Satori was dead. If I did, then it would have been in the previous video. And that's because I'm more familiar with the manga. That's a version of One Piece I've gone over the most. And what the sibling says is, "How dare you bring down our big bro? You'll pay for what you did to our brother Satori." However, I then checked episode 171 of the anime, and I have to admit, I was shook. Because the official subtitles have Hotori and/or Kotori saying, "How dare you kill our brother Satori?" So all of a sudden, I understand where all of the Satori killing allegations come from. But here's the thing. Just because one English translation says kill doesn't mean that it's correct. Mistakes like this are made all the time, no matter what the official translation is. So I needed to check that this was consistent. So I did a thing I don't usually do and watched the English dub of this episode, and Hotori and/or Kotori, I don't care who, but again, one of them says that the Straw Hats killed Satori. Now that's interesting because that's 2 translations now. And it's starting to make me wonder if, maybe it's the Viz translation that's wrong. And maybe they were just trying to soften the language. Because this is back before the Stephen Paul day. Which, if you're not a fan of the official translation now, you really would not have been a fan of it back then. And maybe they were just trying to soften the language. And it was in this fateful moment that the wise words of a subscriber popped into Liam's mind brain. I wish he didn't rely on translations, but looked at the actual Japanese text words. That's it! I should look at the Japanese text words. And I actually do own One Piece in Japanese for situations exactly like this. And what we're looking at is volume number, this one. That should give you an indication of just how bad my Japanese is. But I did contact the Library of Ohara, who speaks far better Japanese text words than myself, and what's literally being said here is, "How dare you with Satori," conveniently leaving the verb right out of the middle of that sentence. So the action is implied, which is a problem because it relies on us knowing the implication. But you know what? The answer to this actually lies at the end of Skypiea. And from here, the situation becomes even more difficult to litigate, because the anime and the manga branch apart even further. In the manga, after Enel is defeated, the Shandians gather Enel's vassals and sentence them to be set adrift on clouds, which is the sky version of setting people adrift on a raft, and a rather brutal punishment, because it implies that they may or may not starve to death, depending on how quickly they can find another sky island to land on whilst adrift. And we do see in this very same chapter, close-ups of all the defeated vassals, Shura, Kiratsu, and our boy Satori, which implies that they've been captured and are alive and shortly to be set adrift. However, this series of panels is very deceptive, as we do know for a fact that Gidatsu wasn't caught because he fell through the clouds, and this shot of him must have been currently falling through said clouds. Also, a side note, a lot of people people were very quick to raise allegations of Chopper having murdered Gedatsu, but in case you don't know, in the manga cover stories, as I said, Gedatsu falls through the clouds, lands on the ground, and builds a hot springs resort with Koza's uncle, which he still manages to this very day. So this shot of Gedatsu in the manga is kind of unreliable, or at least I think it gives you the wrong impression. So what does that mean for the shot of Satori? Does that make that unreliable? Either way, I do think the manga goes out of its way to show that Satori is still alive and therefore not dead. Now, as for the anime, again, that's a different story. The crazy thing is that in the anime, this shot of the priest isn't included. It was never adapted and we skip right past it, which probably reinforces the impression that Satori is dead to anime-only watchers because neither he nor any of the priests appear again. So we actually kind of have to split this case up. In the manga murder trial of Satori, the ball guy, Luffy and Sanji are found not guilty. However, in the anime adaptation of this trial, specifically the English subs and dubs of this trial, according to all of the available evidence, Luffy and Sanji did restrain and murder this dude via blunt force trauma to the head. So it's not looking good for anime Luffy, but General Luffy's legal troubles are far from over. In chapter 979, Luffy stealthily infiltrates Onigashima, preparing for the raid, when he catches sight of some beast pirate members wasting delicious oshiruko, or red bean soup, and thinking of Tama starving, Luffy then proceeds to conjure a Gear 3rd elephant gun and flatten one of the guys like a pancake. If this was real life, his skull would have been caved in. And it's actually even more brutal in the anime, because they have this shot looking at Luffy from below standing over the guy, and he's been flattened to such a degree that you can't even really tell him apart from all the debris on the floor. If this was any other series, I, Judge, would issue a guilty verdict to Luffy right here and now. I mean, it doesn't get more obviously kill murdery than this. However, it does lack some very important context. One is that, again, no one ever says that Luffy killed this guy, and in One Piece in particular, that's very important. If no one confirms the death, then Oda can always do something to weasel his way out of it. And secondly, we're kind of ignoring what Luffy's powers had become to this point. So here's how Oda weasels his way out of this occasion. Throughout One Piece, Luffy's abilities have been slowly unlocking, which eventually culminates in the full-on toon powers of Gear 5th. So my explanation for Red Bean Soup Guy would be that Luffy is so close to unlocking it at this point that he's already able to manipulate people without knowing it. And that this guy, man, look, he absolutely got hurt, but even on this extreme occasion, I don't think we can make murder stick, and I'm forced to find our captain not guilty. The burden of proof for murder is just so much higher in the One Piece world, but we did actually manage it in the last video. In our previous installments, Luffy was actually found guilty of killing Baron Omatsuri from movie 6. However, he was acquitted due to it being non-canon and therefore not within our jurisdiction. You've got to go to movie court for that. However, we have also received a flood of concerning allegations of Luffy's past, spawning from One Piece movie 6, Dead End Adventure, which is a movie that I actually really like it. It's one of the older ones that's actually worth watching. And the climax of the film features Luffy facing off against a former Marine Vice Admiral with a candy Logia fruit. It's a pretty epic fight because one, it takes place on a sinking ship at sea. And it sounds weird, but even though One Piece is a pirate manga, we almost never have fights taking place at sea. There's a storm, the ship is sinking rapidly. It's like One Piece in its purest element, which we almost never have. But this fight ends with Luffy covering himself in flour and then hitting Gaspard with a Gomu Gomu no Bazooka right into a horrifyingly huge cyclone. And much in the same way that Eric the Whirlwind would have almost certainly died after being knocked into the waters of Reverse Mountain as a Devil Fruit user, I would argue that Gaspard was not getting out of that cyclone alive. However, unlike Baron Omatsuri, there is no confirmation of Gaspard's death. It's very Team Rocket blasting off again. And even if there was confirmation, again, it's not canon, so there's only so much that this court will be able to do. So once more, the court will note that Luffy is a very naughty boy, but he's acquitted of this charge as well. Although I do want it noted that movie Luffy is a shade more vicious than actual series Luffy, because sure, these days he's knocking all sorts of dragons into all sorts of volcanoes, but this movie was made back in the more innocent times of just knocking people onto the floor. And now we have another shocking turn of events as I must call Tony Chopper to the stand. So this one, I'm honestly a bit surprised we need to go over, but my god, this department received such a massive influx of comments, so here we are. This is the trial that we apparently need. Tony Chopper stands accused of killing Dr. Hiroluk by a truly absurd amount of people. So I assume that we all know this story pretty well, or at least that's what I thought before I saw all of these comments. To cure his mentor, Chopper went and found a poisonous mushroom that he thought would help. It was a very sweet mix-up, one that ever so many of you in the comments seem to want Chopper to suffer life in prison for manslaughter for. And to that I say, stop that. Although it is a very interesting situation. Really, what Chopper did was provide the filling of a death sandwich. Hiroluk was already dying from his disease, and he then purposely consumed the mushroom that Chopper brought him, and finally he blew himself up in front of Wapol's castle. Hiroluk Hiriluk was stacking deaths, and he may hold the record for most consecutive things to kill a man. Of course, the argument can also be made that Hiriluk never died because we've never forgotten him, and therefore, even in the worst case scenario, Chopper could not be found guilty. Which it definitely isn't the worst case scenario, by the way. I have no idea why so many of you were quick to convict Chopper, especially when it was Hiriluk himself who made the decision to consume the mushroom, and especially when we should be looking more at Hiriluk's actions in general. We could very potentially try Dr. Hiriluk himself for attempted murder, because in chapter 141, he literally shoots some dude's wife, and then their child even comes in screaming. It's a horrible situation, even if Hiriluk says it's just a quote, knockout shot. So you know what? Hiriluk better hope that no one remembers him, because if they haven't forgotten, then he's not dead, and therefore liable to be put on trial for assault with a firearm at the very least. But to round out this trial, Robin, Anime Luffy, and Anime Sanji are going to join Zoro in jail. Robin for the attempted murder of Gecko Moria, Anime people for the brutal murder of the anime ball guy. Our friend Usopp is going to be sentenced to community service for being an accessory. Meanwhile, Manga Luffy, Sanji, and Chopper are going to receive 2 free passes to Wagomu Land on Skypiea as compensation for their ordeals. And as for you, you're being sentenced to subscribe to this channel for consistent injections of One Piece culture administered directly into your YouTube feeds.